Okay, I am pleased to report that in between the last one and this one, I have done quite a little bit of researching on rendering, simply because I couldn't get my system to render correctly. So the first thing I did was realize that hardware acceleration was turned off, the big R, options, just in case you are getting trouble with your rendering, and under the graphics, then it's telling me I've got an unknown video card. This is a recommended one. It's really frustrating, but anyway, that was turned off for some reason. So now I do get some shadowing going on, which is a little bit better, and I'll leave that as that. The other thing that I have been looking at, because I'm doing some interior rendering with the sun settings only, couldn't work out why it wasn't mapping what was on the solar study. So the solar study, this thing here, sun path on, shadow settings on, so we can see where the sun is. But when I was going into this view, and you get this simply by typing in WT. Now if you've got tons and tons of windows, then it'll tile every single window. Okay, so WT is window tile, and it's on the view tab, this thing here, tile windows. That will get different, sort of as many views on the screen as you want, and you can kind of prioritize sort of the size of these sorts of things. So when I went to render, so clicking on the teapot at the bottom, then the sun settings, the in session settings, if I click on this little ellipsis symbol to choose the sun location, and I'm looking at interior sun and artificial. If I just go down to interior sun only and then click this, I wondered what this little button was for. This little button is for sharing these settings with your solar analysis. So if I just move that over to there, and I can't do it like this now, so I'll just drop this over there a bit, juggle this around a little bit so we can see more of this, and go back to that. There you go. So this is now set at 16th of July at 2 o'clock, and before I was setting this by just twiddling these things and twiddling with this. So if I decided, cancel that, to see what the sun looked like if I moved it over here, maybe moved it down a bit. So now we're looking at the 4th of May and 6:15. Then back to my view, this one, and then this is now saying the 4th of May 6:15. So that there, use shared settings, refers to the sun position in this. Okay, and also we can see from our interior visual that the shadows are now moving around. So it's taken me a little while to work out what was going on, but that's basically it. So if I was to, I'll set this to medium render. Also, if you wanted to go to your own sort of render settings, then there's an edit option here. And I think it's because my graphics card still isn't supported. I don't get some other options, soft shadows, etc. But I can go down to this custom option and play around with these. So advanced, precise materials and shadows, and then the render by level. So a medium render is about 5 levels. High render is 10 levels, and then you can just crank this up, you know, as far as you want to go. Or you can render by a time scale, 5 minutes maybe, or until you're happy with the way it looks, and then you can just stop it at that point. So I'm going to crank this back down to, let's say 8, so we get a little bit in between medium and high, and then I'll say OK to that, and then click on this render, and I'll catch up with you when it's finished. But we should see now actual shadow and sun coming through, because this is just rendered interior only. You get better reflections on the glass as well. So we'll see this a bit more accurately in a second. So you can see it's still not a brilliant looking thing. Probably might have been better off if I just rendered to medium and then rendered again. But what we are now picking up is that light coming through the window. Okay, so this is interior, and this is how it works. So interior, sun only. Let's just let this flick itself through. So you can see you got slightly softer. So it's doing all sorts of stuff. I think I'm using the mental ray, or maybe ray tracing, not the mental ray, because I don't think my graphics card supports mental ray, which will give you even more settings, I think, if you can get it set up correctly. But again, you've still got the adjust exposure options, so I can make it slightly darker, picking up those bits and shadows. So you can still adjust all these bits and pieces, but I am getting slightly better renders now, and I'm pleased to see that the sun has appeared, because I was wondering why that didn't happen. Right, so another render option that we have, if we just move this, just move the sun all the way around to this side, I'll have it as high in the sky as possible, so there's kind of lots of shadow now over this side, and you can see that's been updated in this. The other render sort of types that we've got are to use sun and artificial. Okay, interior, sun and artificial. Now all the exterior ones, if I chose an exterior sun, then it wouldn't really affect anything on the inside. It just deals with what's on the outside. So just make sure that you've got your interior and exterior selection, because it does make a big difference to the way it renders. So interior, sun and artificial. Let's just see what happens with this one. So interior lights and sun completely blown out, massively overexposed here. So adjust exposure again. This is going to have to be quite a bit darker. There you go, slightly better. But the windows are still, massively overdone here. So darker shadows, highlights darker. Try to get that bounce. So you're playing around with these things. Maybe lighter shadows inside, maybe a bit brighter, just to see whether we can get anything going on. So this is lights and outside sun, and due to the sun position being over this side, it's all shaded there. Okay, so I think that's probably going to be enough to be getting on with. What I'm going to do in one more video is just do a grid ceiling, and we'll pop some luminaires in that and some floor lamps and see what happens with that. But that's really it. You get the idea now with this. I think this was the thing that was confusing me, the shared settings on the rendering parameter. This thing, you can also type in SU for the sun settings, S and U for sun settings, and then this option. That's the thing that's been sort of slightly confusing me. Okay, we can do solar studies as well. Have a look online about doing that, but you can do a single, multi-day, and a lighting one. I don't know what the lighting one is. So sunlight from top right, sunlight from top left. Azimuth. Oh, okay, you can just set your angle of the sun. But this one, a single day solar study, frames. If we set this 1 hour ground plane, just that day, a single day, 1 day solar study, because that's just looking at single day is only looking at one session. 1 day solar study, time interval 1 hour, so we're looking at between 10 and 4. Maybe you can go from 8 to 10, or from 8 in the morning to late at night, and then you get 13 frames, and then you can apply that and render that. Then you'll get a series of renders based on those parameters. Right, I'm going to finish this and we'll look at grid ceilings and different types of lighting.